All right. Good morning, my rotten children. We're reading Saving Shiloh today. Chapter 12, we're on. The end of chapter 11. Don't forget, 3 days ago the robberies began, and they think it's Judd Travers, but you never know. 3 days exactly is when he got his cast off. So it certainly could be. So hopefully you can see me and hear me. Chapter 12. David's got an idea about the light that I saw over near the bridge. If Judd didn't murder the man from Ben's Run, he says, maybe someone's trying to murder Judd. He slips this note to me during history. Let's say Judd didn't murder anyone, but suppose he knows who did. What if the light you saw was the real killer's flashlight? I bet you he knows Judd could squeal on him and he's setting a trap for Judd down by the creek. I turn over my spelling paper and I send a note back to David. I think you're nuts. I think that whoever the killer is, Judd or anyone else, he threw his murder weapon down the creek bank and now he's trying to find it before the police do. I remember how David says he wants to be either a forest ranger or a biologist, and I write P.S. P.S. I don't think you're going to be a biologist or a forest ranger, either one. I think you're going to write detective stories and bad ones. David reads my note and laughs. David says, Miss Talbot, may I see that note, please? I don't move. I can feel the color rise to my face, and David don't move neither. He sure don't want Michael Schultz and the whole 6th grade class knowing about that light that I saw and snooping around the creek themselves. I can't, he says. It's not my note to give. Well, who wrote it? Asks a teacher. Now the whole class is watching. I did, I say. Then may I see the note, please, Marty? I swallow and I shake my head and everyone's staring. It's private, I tell her. This is a real good secret that David and I have going, and Miss Talbot just might pin it up on the bulletin board the way that she did Jenny Boggs' note last week. I see, says Miss Talbot. And is this class a private class? No, ma'am, I say. Then because you are taking school time for private business, I suggest you stay in after lunch and use some of your personal recess times for your studies, she says. That's fair enough, I guess. I see David stick the note in his pocket, and so while the other kids are playing kickball out on the playground, I've got to make a list of Alaska's natural resources, and David's got a list of mountain ranges. Why do we have to study Alaska in January, I wonder? Why couldn't it be Hawaii? The only thing we got to look forward to is the next weekend, 1st of February, when David gets to stay overnight at my place. That night, when I go to the door to let Shiloh in, I see the light again, and I feel so cold inside my body like I had ice cubes for supper. Now I know this mystery's real. Not just something David Howard and me put together to have some fun. Somebody's out there in the light, in the night, doing something that he don't want nobody to see. Looking for something that he don't want nobody else to find, I'll bet. Maybe even studying our house like I'm studying the light from our window, studying it in the dark. Is it the killer? Is it Judd? I stay at the window watching till the light disappears, trying to figure just where it's coming from. But when there's nothing out, blackness outside your window, you get nothing to pin it to. The old gristmill seems the most likely place. Turns out that David can't come for a sleepover that weekend, though, on account that we're not home. We got to go to Clarksburg for Grandma Preston's funeral on Saturday. Oh, Grandma Preston died. It was pneumonia. Aunt Hetty cries over the phone, can hear her voice all over the kitchen. It happened so fast. One day she had a cold, and the next thing we know it's pneumonia, and then she's gone, just like that. I should have been with her. I could have taken off work and gone to that nursing home and stayed right by her bed, and she cries some more. Now, Hetty, don't you go blaming yourself for something you couldn't help in a million years, says Dad. You did the best you could for Mother, and no one's faulting you now. We'll be there Friday evening as soon as I can get away. What about Shiloh, I ask when my dad hangs up. Grandma Preston's dead scene. The first words out of my mouth are, what about my dog? I'll ask Mrs. Sweeney to come by and feed him, says Ma, but the whole family's never been gone overnight before, I say. Shiloh might figure we're not coming back. All I can think of is that a lot can happen to a dog in 24 hours. Marty, that dog of yours is romping all over creation with that Labrador, and he won't even miss you, says Dad. Couldn't we just put him in the house, I beg? And ask Mrs. Sweeney to let him out every few hours for a run, says Ma. What if he doesn't come back when she calls him, and her with that bad knee? It's enough that she's asked to feed him. There's not much I can say after that. Ma spends the rest of the week cooking food for the funeral dinner. Here's one thing I can do for Hetty, she says, wrapping up a ham and a dish of sweet potatoes. Dad tells the post office why he won't be in on Saturday, and I call Doc Collins. By 5 o'clock Friday evening, we're on our way to Clarksburg, and Ma's in the front seat trying to answer our questions. Dara Lynn's just told Becky that we aren't going to see Grandma Preston ever again. Not ever, 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 she says. Well, why? Asked Becky. 'Cause she's dead, says Dara Lynn. What's dead? Well, it's when your body gets all cold, stiff as an icicle, and somebody put a red-hot iron on your leg. You wouldn't feel nothing, Dara Lynn says. Becky asks if you're ever going to die, and Dara Lynn says, yeah. Becky starts crying because she says she doesn't want anyone putting a red-hot iron on her leg. Becky, Ma says from the front seat, your grandma's gone to be with the angels, and there won't be any more sickness or pain for her ever again. We can rejoice in God's love. She won't be stealing nobody's false teeth no more anymore either, says Dara Lynn, and we can't help ourselves. We all have to laugh. We all feel better after that. We sit up late at that night talking to all the people who drop by Aunt Hetty's to remember Grandma Preston, and we sit real quiet through the service and at the church the next day. Dara Lynn keeps her hands to herself, and Becky hardly makes a peep. I'm beginning to think that Dara Lynn's not going to be too bad a sister after all, but when we get to the cemetery, I wish she'd never been born. She's standing there beside me at the grave while the preacher reads from the Bible, the coffin resting on one side of the hole, waiting to go in. When the preacher asks her to bow our heads and begins his prayer, Dara Lynn inches right over to that hole and peers down inside it. I can't believe it. Dara Lynn, get back here, I hiss. Just then the dirt gives away, and her being so close to the edge, Dara Lynn's arms start going around like a windmill, and somehow, though, that one leg went over the side and she lands on her knees and keeps from going in. She just don't have any sense at all when it comes to danger. Ma reaches out and grabs that girl and yanks her back beside us. Dara Lynn's white socks now are all dirty now and muddy on both hands. I'm thinking what I said about how I wish that she'd dig herself a hole and fall in. But my mind don't stop there. I'm thinking how, what if nobody saw her, and what if she really did fall in? A whole pile of dirt on top of her. Then the coffin goes in and Dara Lynn's buried alive. It's such an awful thought that I can feel the sweat trickle down my back. Sometimes a thought comes to you that you just can't help, but you don't go to jail for thinking. And then we're all back at Aunt Hetty's, and it's like a picnic supper. Everybody's bringing more food, sliced cheese and a turkey, and little rolls to fold the meat up in. There's potato salad and cherry pie and burnt sugar cake and marshmallow jello. I can't tell if this is a party or a funeral. It's near 10 o'clock when we get home that night. First thing I look for is my dog, but this time I can hear him before we even turn up the drive. He is barking his head off. When we get out of the Jeep, he don't even come over. He just stands back there by the hen house, his nose toward the woods and his body jerking with every bark he makes. Shiloh, I say, and he comes over to give me a lick and then goes right back to barking again. Even after we take him inside, he's jumpy and he goes over from window to the next. What in the world has gotten to that dog, asked Ma. And she checks out the house. Our TV's still here. The money box is here. Dad's shotgun is here. Nobody's made off with the toaster or the radio or anything else that we can see. I'm going to get my lantern and I'm going to have a look outside. Dad says, and he takes a flashlight, puts his coat on again, and goes to the shed. But a few minutes later, he's back. The lantern's gone, he says. Somebody took my shears and my knife, too. If it weren't for Shiloh, that thief probably would have broken into the house. I had goosebumps on my arms before, and now even the goosebumps have goosebumps. Was it because of Shiloh's barking that the thief didn't come in? Or was it that we turned up the driveway just about then? And if we hadn't come home when we did, would the robber have made off with Shiloh too? Oh, Ray, says Ma, and sits down hard on a kitchen chair, and they stare at each other. It's like someone knew we were gone. Well, I didn't go around telling everybody, just my supervisor at the post office, says Dad. And I only told Mrs. Sweeney so she'd feed the dogs, says Ma. And Marty called the vet and David Howard, but that's all. They stare at each other some more, and Dad don't even blink. There's only one other person who saw us leave. Judd Travers. He says at last, we passed his pickup just after we pulled out of the driveway. Make sure you're listening. We'll be doing chapter 13 next week.